I want to make a video, but it's not this one. But the fact that I am making a video shows that I have the time to make videos. I also am smart enough to make the video in question. I've got the script written out. I just have to read it, do it, edit it. And that might take more time than making this video, but I could do it over a course of days. I could at least start it. When I ask myself why I haven't done that, it's possible that I don't have enough motivation to make that video, the scripted video. Maybe I don't have enough motivation to do it, but I really do want to make it. In fact, I think about it almost every day. I think, why haven't I made the video yet? What's the holdup? Why do I feel this mental blocker? So I don't think it's a lack of motivation. I think I have a positive attraction toward making this video, but I haven't. It must mean I want to make another video. It's not that I'm not sufficiently positively motivated to make this video. It's not as if mind is a blank slate and I simply don't have enough positive feelings toward making this video. It's that there's this other thing that's telling me this is more important. The scripted video, it's a good one. I'm planning to put it out eventually, but it's not the most important thing I could do. And it's not the most important thing I should say. A lot of my videos have been dancing around or avoiding things that are important and focusing on things that are less important. This is more and more the self-evaluation of the channel. The fruit in the Garden of Eden, the knowledge of good and evil, represents consciousness. It's what differentiates humans from animals. Prior to that, humans live as animals, and they don't experience hell. Hell is suffering over guilt and shame. Animals don't experience that. Animals experience pain, and we also feel physical pain, but that's not what hell is. People sometimes imagine hell is this kind of burning fire, just like people imagine that heaven is like a place in the clouds or something, or the Elysian fields, right? We have to map spiritual, psychological concepts onto physical, tangible pictures. We have to do that to conceptualize them. That's our metaphorical mind. Hell is just suffering due to sin and guilt and shame. And if you do that forever, that would be eternal hell. And that's what we would head toward if we lived forever. Because if we live forever, then everything we ever become attached to, we lose. We become attached to people, we lose people. We become attached to things or places, those things change and we lose them. If you live forever, then everything changes, everything passes away. That creates suffering, that creates loss. We can experience these hedonic treadmills in our short lifespans if we lived forever. This problem would only get worse, because it's a problem of our consciousness. See, the animal has no capacity for reflection, doesn't have the same kind of memory that we do. You can train animals, and animals can remember different paths and directions. So they have memory, but they don't have the concept of reflection. I think as animals are domesticated, they do start to experience this ennui, this tiredness with life that we would suppose would happen if you live forever. Because we have consciousness, our memory becomes reminiscence, it becomes nostalgia. We are comparing the initial glee of a first time you ever had the Halloween candy, the first time with a girl, the first time you got in a fight. Your first time, you compare that to the next time, and the next time, and the next time. And it leads you toward a loss. You're losing what you originally had. And what we're really going to have to bring in here is this concept of the Tower of Babel. People also believe that the Tower of Babel was a physical structure. The Tower of Babel is a metaphor of what? Of urbanism, of two-story buildings. When we eat of the knowledge of good and evil, when we gain consciousness through evolution, which is not purely Darwinian, but it's also Lamarckian, through mate selection, we became smarter. We didn't become smarter accidentally, but we actually, our will, using that term in accordance with the way Schopenhauer uses it, our will as animals was to become conscious. We wanted to become conscious. There was a warning that was given, hey, if you become conscious, you're going to die. Now, what does that mean? Well, animals die, so what is meant by death there? Clearly, if we lived in an animal state prior to consciousness, then the warning that if you eat of that fruit, ye shall die, had nothing to do with physical death, because we already experienced physical death as animals. It was referring to spiritual death. It was referring to hell. That if you gain consciousness, you open the door to hell. You open that Pandora's box. All of a sudden, you can reminisce, you can remember, you can compare. You can create an image in your mind of what your life should be and what it is. You can remember how things were versus how they are. You can fear the future. In other words, you can experience this suffering. Knowledge of good and evil is a technology. It's called moralism. And it leads us to Tower of Babel. It leads to urbanism. Where does language come in? It says in the garden that there was a snake and the snake was talking to Adam and Eve. So language is what leads us to morality. You first have the descriptive. Adam names the animals. He's not telling them what they should do. He's not assigning them moral value. He's simply giving them appellations. He's giving them descriptive terms. Ostensive point gesture, that is giraffe. And then you move along into imperatives, moral code, knowledge of good and evil. And then we start building up these superstructures of urbanism. And once we start getting into these complex declaratives of I'm evil, I'm broken, I'm worthless, now you're seriously in hellish territory, aren't you? Because once you define yourself as fundamentally broken, who is going to want to fix you? If you are narcissistic, if you are selfish, if you are ugly, if you're a spiritual vampire, you suck the life out of everyone around you, people try to help you, you refuse. People try to help you, you say, oh, I'm worthless anyway. People try to help you, you push them away. People try to help you, you fall down, they try to help pick you up, you attack them. You bite them like an angry dog. You say, get away from me. Who's going to want to help a person like that? Nobody. Nobody should. No one is obligated to help you. If you are a negative person, if you're a broken person, if there's something wrong with you, no one has an obligation to help you, and you don't deserve to be helped. And that is a really low point of despair, and that's when people, I think, go to hell. When people reach that low point of despair where it's like, I'm a broken person, no one's going to help me, no one wants to help me, people tried to help me, I pushed them away, I made it too hard, I made it too difficult. Two people who can't swim, one person starts drowning, the other person tries to help them, but they just sort of tug them down with them, right? If you hang around negative people long enough, they will drag you into hell with them. You will not be able to save them. You can't save them. If someone is fundamentally broken, I mean, you can give them money and they will spend it on drugs. You can give them love and they will just absorb it narcissistically. They'll just take it and continue acting the way they are. This is a product of a chain from language into knowledge of good and evil, moralism, the imperative, urbanism, two-story structures, Tower of Babel, declaratives, self-identification as a broken person, as a sinner, as a Samaritan, as someone who's born into the world, not fully animal, but not fully human, something perverse, something in between, something unfinished, something incompatible. All these labels that we give ourselves make it impossible for other people to help us, make it impossible for us to help ourselves. So if there's no living human being who can help us once we're in hell, who's the one person who could help us? It would have to be God. It would have to be God. Because when you're so negative, you're so self-hating, you've put all these descriptors on yourself, you're so broken, no one has the capacity to deal with that. You could give a broken person billions of dollars, and we see the meltdowns happen. We see psychologically broken people who are rich, who have much more money than the average person, and they end up worse off. They end up dead because it doesn't matter how much positivity and love you give somebody. If they're broken, they will flush it down the drain. They will set it on fire, just like the Joker in the Batman movie. I mean, the Joker in the Batman movie represents Satan, right? He represents the pure spirit of hell, which is you just give him all the resources in the world. You give him anything he wants, and he just lights it on fire. It burns. It's like you never even tried. There's no point to trying if all we have is human help. You reach a point where it's like people don't want to help. What would you do? You'd pay a therapist? You'd pay a therapist. You know, we used to pay money for sex, so we call that sex prostitution. Now, I've reached such an advanced period of urbanism that people who don't have friends can pay smart people with PhDs for friend prostitution. Friend for money, friend for cash, fake friend. Professionals, people who make a career. And I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm sure they have good intentions. Just as ultimately, not all prostitutes are evil people. But the institution itself shows something is lacking, isn't it? If you have to pay a prostitute, something's wrong, right? I mean, you can't get sex. You can't get something you feel you need. You need sex and you can't get it. So you've Now you're paying for it. Well, if you're going to a therapist, you need something. You're admitting there's a problem. And you're relying on some human being to fix it for you. And you believe they can, perhaps because they have a PhD, because they're a very smart person. But it has nothing to do with intelligence. It has nothing to do with intelligence. I've got a video. I want to make the video. I'm motivated to make the video. I've got the time to make the video, or at least start it. I haven't started. I'm smart enough to make the video. So intelligence is not, when we're asking these basic questions of why didn't I do this, why didn't I do that, that lead us sort of down this psychological rabbit hole where we're getting to the pits of despair, the pits of hell. How did we get from one to the other, right? When you're in that situation, it doesn't matter how intelligent a person is. A person can be very intelligent, and they can know everything about psychology. They can use that intelligence to pretend to be your friend and to make you feel good momentarily. There are a lot of things in this world that make you feel really, really good momentarily. The majority of people who have spent good money on prostitutes walked away from that saying, I feel pretty good. There's a lot of things that feel pretty good until they don't. Until that temporary satisfaction gets just set on fire by that joker. He just sets it on fire, and it's almost like it never happened. It's almost like you went to therapy for years and nothing happened, and it didn't change, and it didn't get better. And it's almost like it doesn't matter that you kept going to better therapists or more intelligent therapists. This is just an example. You don't have to go to therapy. They are not problems that you solve with a bachelor's or a doctorate. They're not problems that you solve with human intellect. I'm going to get a better therapist. I'm going to get a better computer. I'm going to get a sports car. I'm going to rely on some material, physical, or limited human capacity to try to solve these problems. They are setting these things on fire. It doesn't matter how much you dump into the problem, walking over to an abyss and trying to fill up the abyss with dirt. The abyss is a negative infinite because it wasn't constructed of matter. It wasn't constructed of material. Brokenness is not a physical state. When we're talking about hell, when we're talking about suffering, it's not a physical state because we've already admitted that animals don't feel suffering, they feel pain. So this is not a physical problem. Maybe if you just diet right. But what if you don't want to diet? You say, well, if you just increase your vitamin D, if you just take these antidepressants, if you just lose a few pounds, if you just have some fun with the girls, if you just take some drugs, if you get a little more sunlight, there are all these kinds of material solutions people throw out there that will make you feel better, at least temporarily. Legitimately, all the things I listed will make you feel better, but are they going to solve the problem? No, because a lack of those things didn't create the problem. I'm going back to the concept of domestication of animals. It seems that we can make animals depressed if we urbanize them, if we domesticate them. It seems we can make them exhibit symptoms that mirror what in humans we would call depression. Is that hell? Do animals experience hell? Can we introduce the Tower of Babel to animals and make them experience the hell that we experience? It's an open-ended question. When you've put a descriptor on yourself, and you've said, I am a bad person, I don't deserve to feel happy, it doesn't matter how many material things we give you, you will find a way to punish yourself because you feel guilty, because you put a label on yourself. You said, because of things I've done in the past, or things I do in the present, or things I know I'm going to do again in the future, I don't deserve happiness. I don't deserve anything. I deserve to be punished. I deserve to be tortured. God doesn't put us in hell. We put ourselves in hell. The only way to get out of a situation where you just keep burning up everything that's given to you, every good blessing that comes in your life, every gift that's given to you, every hand that is extended to you, every bit of help that's offered, all of that, if you're in a situation where you keep burning that up, or it's not enough, or it feels like there's a parasite inside you, or a tapeworm, and you're trying to eat this food, and you're trying to grow, and you're trying to mature, and you're trying to grow out of your problems, and you're trying to mend these wounds, and it feels like there's an abyss inside you that's just sucking it all down, and it never seems to get better, it only seems to get worse, then maybe the solution isn't like just quantitatively turning up the knob a little bit. See a better therapist, get better drugs. Oh, your girlfriend wasn't good, get a better girlfriend. You don't like where you live, live somewhere better. You don't like how much money you have, get more money. If these incremental things aren't working, if they work for you, fantastic. But if it's not a question of a material, if it's not like you are a robot and you need this much food and this much sunlight and this much exercise, and if it's a problem where you don't even want to provide those good things for yourself, where you have the time and you have the intelligence and you have the motivation, because on some level you do want those things, but then fighting your motivation is the self-definition of, I'm a bad person, I'm going to punish myself. Even if it's subconscious and you don't fully understand all that labeling and the structure of it, that's still what's going on, someone could walk up to you and offer you 10 different jobs that you'd all love doing, and you deny them all because you'd say, I don't deserve those jobs, I'm a bad person. I don't deserve to experience happiness. You can't just give people things in order to fix that problem. It has to be an entire revolution of the mindset. You actually, that the person that you've created in your mind that you identify with as yourself, who is a bad person, who does these bad things, who deserves to be punished, that person needs to die. Now, if you physically die, again, if consciousness is not merely the body, if there is a difference between the body and consciousness, and the consciousness survives, what do you think a guilty conscience does? What do you think, if you feel guilty now, if you don't, great, wonderful. But if you do, if you feel guilty now and you physically die, what do you think your consciousness is going to do? If it's been punishing you, every good thing, every blessing, you ignore it, you pretend it doesn't exist, you make up excuses, you say you don't deserve it. If your consciousness or your conscience making a hell for you in this body, and this body dies, what do you think your consciousness is going to do? Hey, if the consciousness is a fake illusion, it's just a product of the body, I guess, you die and nothing happens and nothing to worry about, I suppose. But if the consciousness survives, what is that consciousness going to want to do? What is its will? It wants to punish itself. So what's it going to do? It's going to find an even worse predicament, an even worse body. It's going to be born into a worse situation, a situation of abuse, a situation of poverty, you name it. It's just going to get worse if your body dies. So, hey, if you're just a scientific materialist and you think nothing happens after death, then I suppose that's the solution to all life's problems. But if there's a chance that your consciousness survives, then it is going to get worse. If you don't solve this problem, or at least work and get on the right path and go in a good direction and turn away from this hell, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse eternally until something above humanity steps in and changes the whole direction and allows that self-definition, I'm bad, I'm broken, I'm a terrible person, comes in, just smashes it, just kills it, obliterates it with overwhelming force. Because remember, this spirit of the Joker, which just lights piles of money on fire, the spirit of destruction, every good thing that comes in your life, you just burn it up, it gets tossed into the abyss. The only thing that can fill an infinite void, an infinite abyss, it's not intellectualism, it's not argumentation, it is God alone. It is an infinite God. Only he can fill an abyss. Impossible for any limited human or anything in this material reality to fill an abyss. Only God could do that. Only God could quench those fires or replace them with a different fire. A fire not of destruction, but of light and of warmth. A fire of love, right? And he would have to be infinitely loving, because if you're a broken person, and if you're not, then wonderful. I'm congratulating you for humoring the video. But if you self-define as a broken person, then you don't deserve love. Ugly people don't deserve love. Narcissistic people, selfish people, psychic vampires, abusers don't deserve love. If you hurt other people, you don't deserve love. So the only person who could love you enough to help you would be an infinitely loving person. And to help you in the ways that you need to be helped, they couldn't just be some kind of limited human being. They'd have to be above that. But they'd also have to they'd have to connect with you. They'd have to be fully God, fully infinite, but also fully man. Because if it's just some kind of infinite, amorphous, universal, whatever, so the forces of physics or something like that, some kind of Carl Sagan deism or wherever you go with that. If it's just some kind of like the ether, man, it's like the Force, it's the midichlorians. If it was just that and it's just totally disconnected from human consciousness and it would have no connection to us. It would have no desire to help us. So not only does it have to be God, but it has to be man. It has to be fully God and man. And I'm not saying everybody's in the same place with it. Some people, like a sleep paralysis demon, it's like most nights you sleep fine, but then once every few years, you wake up and there's that sleep paralysis demon. And some people have that sleep paralysis demon every single night, but it's the same demon. It's the same spirit. It's that same force of fear and death. You can ignore it. You can pretend it isn't there. You can smooth it over, distract yourself, focus on other things. But if it's gotten to the point where it's inhibiting you from living the life that you should be living, these kind of little piecemeal solutions of like, I'm going to adjust my diet. I think I'm going to join a club. I think I'm going to start dating. I'm going to get in a relationship. I'm not saying these things won't feel good. I'm not saying these things won't make you feel better, but there's a difference between feeling better in the moment, feeling better temporarily, and solving the root of that problem. And the root of that problem is only something that can be solved by an infinite God who loves you infinitely, is also fully man, so he can connect fully with you. Because if he's like an alien with the head of an elephant and 6 arms or something, it's like, what does he have to do with you? What does a dude with a crocodile head have to do with you? What if you're a self-punisher? What if you hate yourself? What if you want to punish yourself? What if that's your will? Then you're not going to go on the Buddhist path. Recognize that there is a God. He's fully man, and he loves you, and he wants to help you, and he has the infinite power and will to help you. And you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do Buddhist meditation. You don't have to do Buddhist practice. And again, technically enlightenment, it takes no effort. You simply have to let go of attachments. Well, that's very hard for people to do, to let go of attachments. And it's also negative. It's also, hey, don't do this. Don't be attached. It's a negative command. Now, the first thing you do is you say, I can't fix these problems. I've reached the end of my rope. The material solutions are not sufficient. They make me feel better, but I know they're not fixing the root of the problem. I know I can't fix it. I know other people can't fix it. I know it can't be fixed by material things or human beings. I'm going to ask an all-loving, infinite God who's fully man, come in my life, fix this problem. I'm going to ask you to fix it, God. Because I can't fix it, no one else can. There's activity going on there. There is a force, there's a spirit, and there's an attachment being formed. There's an anchoring being formed. To replace an infinite void, you need something infinitely positive. You don't just need to detach. It's not to say that people can't benefit from Buddhist practice or Hindu practice or Jewish practice or Muslim practice. It's not to say that that's not better than the alternative, which is this totally lost, hedonistic, I hate myself, I'm just going to be addicted, Perversion is when you take the sex drive, which is meant to push us toward procreation and life and the animal instincts, which, life is good. It's good that animals feed, fornicate, and fight. That is part of the beauty of our world. But when you take those instincts and you dissociate or displace or alienate them from their original intention of generation and of life and of living, and you make them ends unto themselves, I'm just going to eat candy and junk food and fast food. When I have sex, it's not procreative sex. It's, this weird kind of like intestinal stuff. Christianity is terrible. Christianity is the reason why people feel guilty and shameful. If we just got rid of religion, everyone would feel wonderful about themselves. We'd all be self-love. Self-love, everybody. Love yourself. Accept yourself for who you are. And these are the people who want you to put an arm in their intestine or put their arm in somebody else's intestine. That is extreme sadomasochism. That shows that you have a very unhealthy relationship with shame and guilt, my friend. If you're getting off, if you're achieving these heavenly emotional highs, these erotic, ecstatic, orgasmic experiences by people hurting you and punishing you, or the opposite, sadistically hurting, abusing other people. Oh, it's just, we're all consenting adults. I don't care. I don't care if you're 82 and you've read the books and you've written the books on how to be a safe play sadomasochist. There is some kind of element or guilt or shame in there. If we just get rid of Christianity, no, if you get rid of Christianity, you feel more shameful, more guilty, and you get more perverse in the way that you eat and in your sexuality. So now you're not physically fighting. Now it's all this passive aggressive, which is my big problem, being passive aggressive rather than being active and assertive. So instead of punching the kid on the playground, you hold a grudge for 30 years, and you're at some dinner party and you're scheming, and that is terrible. It's much better, look, if you have a problem with somebody and you just punch them in the face, I don't recommend it, that's not me. But on a psychological level, yeah, you've inflicted some pain to the face and your knuckles are sore, and maybe you were in the wrong, maybe you're in the right. You get in a physical fight, and that's what it is, right? You don't need to hold a grudge for 20 years. You don't need to scheme about it and think, oh, I wish I punched that person. I wish I hurt them. That's worse, right? Being angry at somebody and just hitting them, of course, legally is worse, but psychologically, it's there, you did it, it's done, it's over with. This passive aggressive, like, oh, I just wish I could hurt him and torture him, and that is a type of hell to be in. That is a type of suffering. We've said a lot. I might wrap it up. The self-definition of a Christian means a lot of things to a lot of different people. Some people would say that a Christian is someone who accepts Jesus Christ. Some people would say a Christian is someone who's repented and turned away from sin. Some people would say that means turning away from major sins. Other people would say it means turning away from all sins. Some people would say it means turning away from sin temporarily or momentarily or on a mental, spiritual level or something. And other people would say, no, it means you literally have to stop sinning. So there's so many little intricacies, and that's just like on the basic stuff. That has nothing to do with orthodoxy. How old is the earth? Evolution. True or false? Gays? Abortion, you dial into the issues, and then it's like people get into like essence energy distinction. We're talking about the papacy versus the orthodoxy versus the infinite Protestant sects, and you've opened a whole can of worms. Millions of people saying that every other Christian is a fake Christian and a false Christian. I've always tried to sidestep that. I've always felt that just was not something I wanted to get into. It's not something I have the confidence to get into because I don't have the confidence in the more basic stuff. When people call themselves Christians and say things that are ridiculous and act in ways that are laughable, that is something that I know turns people, not just me, but it turns other people away from the message I'm trying to convey when you see people who are laughable, ridiculous. And if somebody is going to run around jumping and singing and getting crazy and speaking in tongues and something, and if that helps them, great. I'm not so sure that would be helpful to me. I think there are a lot of people who that really turns off. There are a lot of people who would insist that if you don't do that, you're not a real Christian. Just sidestep the whole thing of who is a real Christian and self-defining as a Christian, and what standards do you have to be at, and what orthodoxy, and what kind of, whether you call that Christianity or not, whether you say, well, all of that sounds really good, and I see how that's similar to Christianity, but I have a couple of critiques about historical Christianity versus modern day Christianity versus, but also there's this other esoteric religion that's kind of like Christianity, but not, or like, maybe we should just like get hung up on a little few parts of the argument. Go ahead. People who are already, if you're convicted in Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, if you have a system and you think it works for you, it's going to be really hard for me to convince you otherwise. If you feel like you've got a system that addresses the problems in your life, if I come along and say, nope, that system is broken, time to fix it, I say, no, it's not, it's working for me. If you feel like you don't have a system, what you do have a system. The system is called like hedonism, apathy. We have a system, right? It's easy for us to think that everything's anarchic. Really, what we had is medieval Christianity where people were told not to be hedonistic. They were told from the highest of kings down to the lowest of peasants. Everyone was told, whether they followed it or not, people were told, look, if you engage in perversions, if you just do whatever you feel like, self-love, You be you. If you do that, you're going to hell. And that was discouraged for a long time. And then the Enlightenment, you get people like the Marquis de Sade, who very clearly has a desire to hurt people because he believes that he deserves to be a master. And this becomes the psychology of the majority of the elite, both ostensibly Christian and non-Christian, who decide we don't need the people anymore. We have mastery over them. We should just get rid of them. Let them destroy themselves. Let them waste themselves out. Let them consume themselves through the spirit of destruction, through perversions and hedonism. And that's what's promoted actively. It's actively. It's not an accident. If you think that the people in charge, if you think there's no one who's making decisions, if you think we live in some kind of pure anarchic democracy where the people rule, it's mob rule, crazy, look at the rioting in the streets, it's all just an accident. How do we think ourselves, we just gotta let the elites know what's up. They're asleep at the wheel. They don't want to rule. They're weak. They just gave up responsibility. We just got to let them know what's going on. We just got to explain to them, hey, man, don't you know that all this rioting stuff is bad? Oh, I wasn't aware. Thank you for informing me. I'll make the correct reforms. Some people imagine it be like that, but it don't. Because through a Spenglerian process, civilization becomes weak and decadent, and nobody wants to enforce order anymore. No one wants to live a good life anymore. No, it's an intentional spirit which says we want to take over. We want total control. We want to promote hedonism. We want to destroy people's discipline. We want to destroy people's confidence. It's full spectrum warfare on every front. Warfare, it's dietary warfare, it's educational warfare, it's intellectual warfare, it's historical warfare, it's sociological, economic warfare. It's every type of warfare you could imagine, but at the deepest level, it's spiritual warfare. It's warfare that says nobody's in charge. We live in a democracy. It's your fault. If things go wrong, it's your fault. You're responsible for all the bad things that happen. Hey, if you don't like this one person in the two-party state, you should have voted for the other guy in the two-party state. So they put all the blame on you. They don't take blame themselves, and they don't even show themselves. They don't even reveal themselves. They wear t-shirts and jeans. They walk around in t-shirts and jeans. I'm just a normal guy with you. I just have a few $1 billion. That's the presentation. It's very deceptive, and very smart people take these deceptions at face value. Then they create convoluted intellectual systems of political theory based off these false assumptions because they're very intelligent, but they don't have the common sense to understand when they're being lied to. And it is a lie. It is a lie that the world is just falling apart accidentally. It's degeneration. It's the aging of a civilization. It's an intentional spirit of destruction that wants total control and total mastery and a kind of godhood on earth of a select chosen who rule over everything, and everyone else is just thrown into the pit of hell. They, of course, think they're not going there. They think they're going to live forever, which, as I've said before, is still a problem. Still going to hell even if you live forever. The very first video I ever made on this channel was a bold declaration. Deleting that video, okay, what can I do? I don't want to be a big hypocrite. I don't want to represent myself as something I'm not, as some big moral hero, some kind of idol that people should look up to. So what can I do? Oh, I'll make intellectual videos about politics and stuff. At least that way I'm not lying, I'm not deceiving, I'm not presenting myself as some kind of moral religious preacher, priest, or something like that. I'm not deceiving people, making people think that I'm some kind of godly Christian man, because that would just add to my sin, right? If I'm a sinner and then I present myself as some kind of authority on God and religion, then that just multiplies with hypocrisy. I don't want to do that. But what I found is that by not talking about these things, I've committed lies of omission. Is that people have taken me as an authority figure anyway, and people imagine me to be a moral person anyway, even though I've deliberately tried to avoid that confrontation. So it hasn't mattered. And so In a sense, I've committed a worse deception. You know, the pastor who gets up there and says, you know, you should be selfless and give away all your money, and he's greedy. Or, you know, you should be chaste and he's unfaithful. No likes needed. How about that? No likes needed. We'll just throw up the video. Maybe this will finally remove the blockers, my mental blockers that are stopping me from just going ahead making another top 50 reasons, blah, blah, blah. Top quirky, eccentric, cutesy, intellectual points you've never considered. Top surprising thoughts. Top 50 shower thoughts. We can go back to making those videos maybe. Some light, fun, enjoyable entertainment. Hopefully. Got to stop it there. Thanks for listening. See you next time.